Hey, this is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and today is Tuesday. It's October the 21st. This will be our chart lesson for today. Um, this is pretty much what I would describe as a spike in channel. Prices spiked up and then backed off a little and have been in this up channel all day long. Originally, I had it a little bit tighter than this, and I was concerned we had a little bit of a break. But as time went on, I adjusted it some. And I don't think we had a break until here, and then we're moving to a new high, which we already have now, but it's still working higher. I have a target of here based on a measured move. You can see that, um, and that gives you a target of right there. And we're really close. Whether or not we'll make it, I don't know. If we get another leg similar to that one, let's just measure that leg real quick too. It's going to put us right about, it still comes up a little short if you do it that way. Maybe it doesn't matter whether you move it over, he actually drops back a little bit doing it that way. But that was my original target. We may or may not make that. Uh, while this doesn't look like it, well, actually it does kind of look like it now, but as you see it during the day, it doesn't look like a very strong trend. And as I described in the midday chart lesson, um, when you see these little bars that are choppy and a lot of dojis, and it just keeps going higher and higher and higher with little small pullbacks, even though that doesn't look like it, that's a very strong trend. And those trends usually will just keep going and going. Doesn't mean they can't reverse at any time like any other trend, but generally they're very strong trends, and they don't appear to be. They're kind of they're deceiving because it looks like prices are really struggling, but it's just consistent buying um, all day long, all the way up until you got a little bit of a sell-off here, and now you've worked to a new high. Whether or not we'll get that target, we'll just have to see. But that's my near-term target until we get a trend, working in the other way or a reversal and it starts trading in the other direction. So this is the 2,000 tick chart. Um, I've still got my 4,000 tick chart up, and I've fixed this where um, somebody pointed out to me that you can actually set it up where all of your lines from one chart will automatically transfer to the other chart. So all I did was draw the lines on the first chart, and you can see they just automatically appeared on this chart in the same locations, and it's pretty much gives you the same thing. You don't quite get the same feel with the short-term trend lines. This one worked out. You got the close and move to a new low, but these just don't hardly trend enough to give you much, so you don't see much there. But you can see most all of the entries are still at the key entry points, very similar. You can still see second entries. There's a couple of um, failed second entry shorts in there, but pretty much it gives you all the same entries. And if you came to this chart, all these would be the same type of entries. A couple of them may not be a second entry on this chart like they were on the first chart, but most of them you still get a second entry and everything still works out pretty much the same thing. You just have less bars. Um, there hasn't been enough volatility really to need to use this chart, but as I stated before, you can use any chart you like. I prefer the 2,000 tick chart because it moves fast enough without moving too fast, and it gives you enough setups when things are normal. As things got a little bit faster and there were so many setups on the other chart and just so much price action, it got to be so much that it kind of made sense to move over to this chart. But for the last 2 days, I've traded the 2,000 tick chart, and looks like that's, we're kind of back to, there's still a lot of volume in here, uh, but it's not so volatile like it was for a week or so there, a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. It was just simply too volatile to try to trade any of this. Um, so I really wasn't trading any, and there's actually a little trend line working down through here as well. And no matter how you drew this, you still kind of got the break and moved to a new low, and then you almost could have drawn it. You might even can draw it like that, but you usually have to draw it off the closes, and so I would have drawn that first one about like that, and so you got the breakout side and then the move lower. Make sure I do. Yeah, I do have the 2000 tick chart up there. So, um, but let's go over the trades. There's actually a trade right here too. For some reason, it's not marked. Got to come back and mark that one. Set up right around the 7 o'clock hour. But let me show you the trades that I saw during the overnight. I mean, we sold off a little bit. The market was way overdone for a little bit of a correction at the close yesterday because we closed basically on one tick from the very high of the day, and then we sold off a little bit because we were due a correction, and then from about 2 o'clock my time, it traded straight up, which this is too strong. You're not going to maintain this. And we had a little bit of a correction, and then we dropped off into a more sustainable trend of a 45-degree angle. And you can see that just shoots across there. That's what you want to see, a good healthy trend. And you can tell as we got into the regular market how you have all these little small bars moving up. That's a strong trend. And there were lots of entries on this chart, on the 2000 tick chart, lots of good setups here. And it was really a pretty good day. But let's just talk about the trades, and then we'll move on. We were trending down here. We had a break, a couple of legs down. You usually get that one more little push down like you did right here. Notice the break, the new low. And sometimes you'll get two legs, and that's still two legs down. The second leg is just not as big as the first leg. And notice you went a little bit lower there, and you pull back, and you go a little bit lower, and then it reverses, and you get a first entry short, pull back. And there's no reason to go short there. This is one of those where it traps people. It's where they usually trap it on a reversal. Look how flat the EMA's got, and look how prices are just jumping up and down. And you get this failed second entry short, and you're looking for a reversal anyway, so I like that one to the long side. It made me a little bit nervous when that backed up, but you might have wanted to use a limit order there anyway because there is some overlap. And there is a chance that it's going to break higher and pull back, which it did anyway, but you would have scalped out of this long before it pulled back. So you wouldn't have got a runner most likely, but you were never in any danger of getting stopped out on this trade. I mean, even if you used a stop, it only backed up a couple of ticks. So nice, easy trade because it didn't close on its top, but it's a trap, so it really didn't matter. And sometimes those traps will shoot off real fast. So you got to be careful. Using a limit order, sometimes they're always smart to use, but the danger is that sometimes you don't get filled on them and you get left behind on the best trades. And so that's the real danger. You're going to miss the very best trades being too conservative because sometimes they just take off. And this one just kind of took off, and you probably wouldn't have got filled on a limit order on it. It just takes off. But anyway, there's a failed second entry short. There's a new high here. It's a second entry long. Several different reasons. You've had your break and a new low, and you got that little failed break lower, and then a higher high, higher low. So I like this one to the upside. Again, you didn't get anything but a scalp out of it, but a good trade. And then you're working back down here, and you draw your trend line off these first two, and it bounces right here. There was actually a second entry long right there, but you just came off the high side, and you're working back. And that's the first real close outside. This thing is probably, let's just redraw this thing. For some reason that didn't look right. I may have moved this on the bigger chart or something. I think it's a little lower than that. I think it's right across there. Either way you draw it, you still you get a little bit of a close out and a move to a new low. But the real thing here is you got to bounce off the lower trend line. This kind of confirmed it. And I actually had this a little higher at the time, so it was a bounce directly off mine. I corrected it later because it looked like we were getting a break here, but yet prices were still very strong. And so I corrected my trend line a little bit and redrew it. And you have to do that as you go along the day. Always double check it. And but this was a nice bounce right off the trend line, and I think you were better off to wait on this bar when it broke higher and just drop a limit order in there because this is pretty bearish, and try to get a little better feel. And you could have, and then it just takes off all of a sudden. And nice trade. and then you get a second entry long here. And this is another good example. If you tried to use a limit order here, you may not have got filled on this one. So, but when it bounced off that trend line and it's a second entry long, even though that's somewhat of a doji, I still like that trade. Was a strong trend, and you know you're probably going to retest this high at the very least, even if you're not going any further. But you got a clear channel working here, and it was real easy to find. Nothing real serious about, nothing hard to find on this channel at all. Real basic channel. If you just drew it off the first two swings, it was there. And you might have had to adjust it just slightly. And now that I've made this bigger, you can see it's just not quite right. But anyway, nice second entry long there, and then guess what? You get to the other side, so then you're expecting prices to come back to this side. And this is a nice clue here. When you get a trend that's so strong that you can't come back to the lower side, that it works sideways across, that's generally a clue that, hey, they can't even sell this thing off lower than once they found kind of a support area right across there, they couldn't get any lower again. And that's a good sign that they're defending that, somebody's defending that level. There's just too much buying right there. Too many people perceive that as a good price level. And so you pretty much want to buy every time you come back. There wasn't a very good setup on this one. I didn't like this one. Too much overlap there. I was too afraid that it was going to come on down and hit this side, but it couldn't. It went back up. And you don't want to short this either, because you don't want to take a chance of what happened right here, shorting, and then you get a breakout pull back long. But they finally pulled it back to the trend line right here, and it reverses right off of it. This one was a little questionable because it was so close to that high. But this trend, is probably taking precedence. And like I said, this channel across here is showing you that they can't sell it off. So I like going long there. I went back and forth whether or not to make that one green. But if you look, you got a new low here. You tried to go lower once, and you tried to go lower twice. It's a failed second entry short. It didn't quite get back to the trend channel line. It couldn't because the trend line's taking precedence. And so I like just going long right above that, or at least dropping a limit order in there. And you could have gotten filled. Even if you didn't get filled here, it came back here and gave it to you. But then you get a second entry long, and this is also a breakout pullback long. You don't have support here yet, but this trend channel is obvious and clear. And so I liked it. There's enough room to get out before you get back to the midline. And I really thought it would shoot on through. It didn't, but it was an easy scalp. And then I didn't like this because I really expected it to take on off, and so it looked like it was probably going to try to come back and test the trend line again. So in that case, once you got this new high, I was going to wait on a couple of failed attempts to go lower. And there was actually one right here. I thought I had this whole thing circled. Oops. You really could have entered this one right here if you wanted. Notice that it backed up. But it didn't go below these lows right here, which is where I would put my stop on that one, because this is more like a little trading range. And so you were better to get that little trap right there and wait on that one. But I'll be honest, I'm guessing that a lot of people probably, especially if you're trying to be more aggressive, are going to go long right there, because it's still two failed attempts to go lower that held on this support area. And that one's hard to ignore. And if you put a stop with one tick there, you would have gotten stopped out of that one. So, but I liked it. But if you were going to enter right there, you got to give it to right here, because that's really your support. Those multiple bars across there, and they did test that one more time before it went higher. So hopefully you didn't enter here and get stopped out. If you did, again, I would have given this at least a couple of ticks if you're going to enter here. If you didn't feel comfortable doing that, you're better off to skip that one and just see if you don't get a better entry. It may go without you, but that's just a chance you got to take. But there's also, this one was really tempting here. Notice that there's a little pullback here. There's a first entry, but it never goes lower, and you get a second entry right there. So I just didn't like that one. We'd had a big movement here, and I really thought there was a chance that we should be coming, since we didn't go to this side, you figure they're going to come back to the trend line first. And there's just too much overlap there. This one would have worked, and it is a second entry. But normally you want to see, notice I know every bar just makes a lower low or an equal low. It never makes a higher low and then another lower low. And that's like, just to make sure you understand what I'm saying here. Notice how you're coming back here and you make a lower low. Now you got a higher low, so then you got another lower low here that's lower than that bar. That's what you're looking for. And if you don't see a couple of those, that's, even though there's some swings in there, that's still like one move on this level. And and it's pretty choppy on this level, so I just would want to see more. Again, it would have worked, but I just think it was a risky trade. I don't think it was worth fooling with. There's been too many other good trades, and there'll probably be too many other good ones coming up, so just wait. And then, of course, you get a new high, pull back first entry, pull back, and you get a bounce right off the trend line, a second entry long, and you could have used the limit order, maybe a tick back into that one, and off it goes. And you get a pull back right here. Notice that it pulls back and goes higher. So now you figure you're going to go straight on. So I liked entering there. And it is like a failed second entry short. Notice how you got the one leg up and a little correction, the second leg up, and then the correction. So I treated that, something that looks really close on a good day is probably going to act like it looks. So I figured it was going to act like a trap and go on up. And of course it did. It didn't go as quick as I thought it would. It made another little correction. But now you got a for sure failed second entry short, and you're getting a bounce right off that EMA. So where do you think you're going to go? Up to here, and that's exact. And notice it went lower first and then went out the top side. I love that setup. If you were already in, you might even add on there. Great setup. And then of course you pull him back, and you get a second entry long here. You don't want to take that second entry long. In my opinion, because you're kind of, you pushed below the EMA there, and you're coming off the high side, so there's a strong chance you're going to the other side, and it looks like it's going to fail. But then when it makes a lower high and breaks higher again, I liked going long then on that one, because now you're getting a second entry off the low side, and it knows how nothing's closing around, everything's bouncing off that EMA. So you figure you're going to push for one more new high, and it does. It actually makes a couple of more pushes, and then it backs up, and you get a second entry long here, but not a very good setup considering that you're getting a trend line break. And then it makes that one little push lower. You get your closes outside, push lower, and that's another reason not to take any of that. Notice that little channel working back. And you get your closes outside and move to a new low. And then look at that bullish bar there. Opens on its low, closes on its high. Just go long right there. It's a little bit aggressive because it's a first entry counting off the lows. And you never get a second entry here till way up here. And you don't want to be taking that way up there. So if you miss this one, and it is a little aggressive, but if you see all of this, know we're probably going to make a new high, then you probably want to take that trade right there. And it shoots straight up. Again, you don't want to go long there. Again, you just don't want to go long right in there. But notice this. Here it is again. You've had your first correction, and then one, and then two. Once you get that second failure, it's that two test rule. I like that one, and you can see that one would have worked. And here you only got you tried to go lower twice. You didn't get that second test, so I wouldn't have gone long there on that very high for sure. Still might go higher, but I don't like that setup as much. It is back inside the trend line, as you can see, working up through there. But we've had that breakdown. We've got a new high. Again, it wouldn't surprise me to see us make that target that's up there. See how close. We're not far away from it at all. Maybe 5-6 points away. I don't know if we'll make it or not. I'm guessing that they're going to keep pushing it higher, but you had a break here, and it's really struggling. It's starting to really just look back in the channel looking like it did, so it wouldn't surprise me if we don't continue higher, but I'd be real careful and only go with a good setup over here. And And again, if you go over to the other chart, you can see that most of those same trades all the way up. And they're there, and you still get the little double trap rule there, double test rule. You still got your break here and your new low and a nice reversal bar. Pretty much all those same trades were blocked from the other chart. This one you probably would have skipped just because it looks like nothing but 4, 5, 6 bars stacked up in a row. I definitely wouldn't take that. You got your little trap right there. Okay, I'm sorry, I had a slight interruption there, but I don't remember where we left off. I think we talked about all the trades. Just remember that kind of double. Notice that you got a low, you had a correction there, and then you tried 2 more times, it failed. Those are generally great traps, and if you can't, when you try something twice and it fails, you're probably going the other direction, and that's generally what happens. So look for that. Anytime you're not sure about when you should be getting long on a correction, that is generally a good rule of thumb. Now, I will tell you this, you'll miss some trades because you, like right here, notice that you got the new low here and you've only tried to go lower twice. And so if you wait on a third one, it may, this one could take on off and you never get that third one. So, but if you're not sure, wait on that third one. Generally, when you get that double rule test, you're good to go. Okay, I'm sorry, I keep getting interrupted here, but I think we're pretty much done. We've covered all the trades. No sense in rehashing any of this. We're about 20-something minutes into this. Today's my wife's birthday, so I'm going to wrap it up and get out of here early. We're going to celebrate her birthday this evening. But anyway, hope you had a good trading day. It's hard to really mess up a day like this. You could pretty much buy any of the buy signals today, and you got at least a scalp out of it. So it's really hard to mess it up. And that's why I'm always harping about stay with the trend on these good trend days, particularly. So, and don't be trying to counter trend trade. You see there was one nice move here, and you might have got a scalp there. But most of these, if you tried to go short, you got burned and you end up with a losing trade. And so don't try counter trend trading these kind of days when you see all these little bars that just keep making little small swings. They don't look real powerful because they don't take off real fast in most cases, and they're constantly pulling back, but they will just keep going higher and higher and higher. And just as an example, really, if you look at the overnight low, we were at 1885 and we're at 1931.50 now, 31, a little over 1931 anyway. So you figure 1886 to 1931, pretty good move there, 40-point move, so not bad at all. And if you just looked at it from right around the regular open this morning, 1910, 11 area to 1930, so almost another 20 points there. Maybe at 20 points before the day's over. So these are strong trends, and don't let them fool you, and don't be trying to counter trend trade them is really the point I'm trying to make. So, but I'm going to wrap this one up. We'll be back to do it again tomorrow. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.